I slipped out of my driveway just as the sky began to lighten, the horizon painted in soft pinks and golds. The streets were empty, save for the occasional jogger greeting the day. My car's engine purred steadily as I turned onto Crestwood Boulevard, anticipation of my morning walk stirring a calm excitement. Pulling up to the gated entrance, I reached for my access card without a second thought, a routine I'd repeated countless times. The guard booth was dark, its windows reflecting the pale dawn. I expected the familiar green flash and the gate's smooth slide, but instead I was met with silence. I tapped my card again. Nothing. The gate stood firm as though sealed by an unseen force. My brow furrowed in mild confusion. Electronic glitches happened, but rarely here. I glanced to the right, spotting the idle security guard leaning against the booth, sipping coffee. Before I could call out to him, a crisp voice crackled from the intercom above my windshield. "Hold your vehicle," it ordered. I blinked at the speaker, surprised by the formality and the unfamiliar tone. This was no ordinary glitch. The intercom crackled again, its speaker emitting a harsh buzz that cut through the morning calm. I leaned forward, trying to make out the words. The voice was crisp and commanding, far from the usual courteous gate attendant. I rolled down my window and pressed the talk button. "Good morning, my card seems to be malfunctioning. Could you please check it?" I asked, keeping my tone polite and steady. The guard behind me glanced over, brows raised in curiosity. Instead of a helpful response, the intercom spat out a cold directive: "You will not enter." The words were clipped, almost mechanical, as if someone had pre-recorded them for maximum impact. My heart skipped a beat at the unexpected rebuke. I tapped my card one more time, hesitating before lifting my hand. The gate remained immobile, and the intercom fell silent once more. A knot formed in my stomach. This was no simple access glitch. The booth's sliding glass window hissed open, revealing a woman whose presence filled the space with tension. She stood tall, her posture impeccable, every inch the picture of authority. Her navy blazer was crisply tailored, adorned with a gold nameplate that read Mrs. Davenport and the HOA emblem embroidered on the breast. Even the morning light seemed to accentuate her sharp features. I recognized her instantly, the HOA president who had earned a reputation for iron-fisted rule and unwavering enforcement of every bylaw. She didn't bother with pleasantries, her lips were set in a firm line. Without a word, she fixed me with a steely gaze as though daring me to question her authority. The hush that fell over the gathered residents spoke volumes. This was her domain, and I was in her crosshairs. I wound down my window fully and offered a calm greeting. "Good morning, Mrs. Davenport. It seems my access card isn't reading correctly. Could you please override the gate?" My voice was steady, but inside I felt a flutter of nerves. She arched an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. Instead of fetching her handheld device, she tapped the intercom button again. "There's no override for you," she replied curtly, each word clipped like a whip. The security guard behind me shifted uneasily, his eyes flicking between Mrs. Davenport and me. I noticed the descriptive plaque on the booth, Community First Security Services. It seemed ironic now, there was nothing communal about this interaction. Steeling myself, I met her glare squarely. "I'm simply here to enjoy my usual morning walk," I said. "I've lived here for years without issue." My tone was firm, conveying both patience and resolve. Mrs. Davenport pressed a finger against her earpiece, her posture rigid with authority. "You will remove your vehicle from HOA property immediately," she commanded, her voice colder than the morning air. My grip tightened on the steering wheel as I replied evenly, "I understand your concern, but there's no reason to escalate. I'm a homeowner in good standing." I kept my gaze level, refusing to show frustration. Behind me, the gathering crowd murmured in disbelief. Neighbors exchanged glances, surprised by the president's uncharacteristic rigidity. The security guard remained silent, clearly uncomfortable with the brewing conflict. I leaned back slightly, adopting a conciliatory tone. "Let's resolve this calmly. If my card isn't working, simply verify my status in the system." I hoped diplomacy might defuse the tension. Mrs. Davenport's lips curled into a thin smile as she reached for a sleek tablet resting on the counter. With swift precision, she swiped through menus, her eyes narrowing in concentration. Each tap seemed to underline her conviction that she held all the power here. She swiveled the tablet toward me, the screen displaying a live feed of access logs. "See for yourself," she said coolly. "Your card has been flagged for suspicious activity. Until that is resolved, you are barred from entry." I leaned forward to study the logs, but the glare off the glass made it impossible to read. "Flagged by whom?" I asked, refusing to back down. "This must be a mistake. I've used this card daily without incident." The president's smile widened. "Not a mistake," she replied, tapping her earpiece. "Security, escort this individual off HOA grounds." Her tone left no room for discussion. She had cast me as the villain. I took a deep breath, the cool morning air filling my lungs as I squared my shoulders. The president's ultimatum hung between us like a challenge, but I refused to let intimidation win. My voice remained steady as I said, "I've done nothing wrong. Please cancel this flag and let me through." Mrs. Davenport's eyes flashed with indignation, but before she could respond, I reached for my phone. "I'm calling the HOA office," I announced, dialing the number of the property manager I'd met just weeks before. The guard shifted uneasily, his fingers drumming on the counter. As the line connected, a hush fell over the small crowd of neighbors. I explained the situation calmly, detailing how my card had always worked and how no notice of flagging had been sent. Voices murmured behind me, some supportive, others skeptical, but I kept my focus on the call. On speakerphone, the manager's voice was apologetic yet firm. "I see no issue on my end. I'll override the flag immediately." Relief washed over me as I thanked him. Mrs. Davenport's tablet lit up with new logs, the suspicious tag gone as quickly as it had appeared. The gate's mechanism hummed, ready to grant passage once more. The tablet's screen flickered as the flag cleared, notification appeared, and the gate mechanism emitted a soft click of readiness. Mrs. Davenport froze, her poised composure cracking for the first time. The air felt charged as neighbors leaned in, sensing the shift in power. Her eyes widened, disbelief battling with indignation. She tapped the tablet once more, but the logs remained unchanged. The override had stood. A flush crept up her neck, betraying the calm facade she'd worn so proudly. Behind me, the security guard exhaled in relief, his posture relaxing as he stepped aside. The murmurs among the onlookers swelled into quiet cheers and supportive nods. Even the joggers paused to witness the rare spectacle of the president's capitulation. Mrs. Davenport's shoulders sagged. She glanced around at the small crowd, her authority diminished in a matter of moments. With a curt nod, she tapped the intercom to reopen the gate and then turned away, the defeat etched on her features. Mrs. Davenport's defeat stung like a public humiliation and her composure snapped. She withdrew a sleek smartphone from her pocket and tapped the 911 icon with trembling fingers. The neighbors watched in stunned silence as she barked into the receiver, her voice clipped and urgent. "I need an officer at Crestwood Estates entrance immediately," she demanded, pacing behind the booth. "There's a trespasser refusing to comply with HOA directives and security orders." Her glare fixed on me as if daring the dispatcher to doubt her words. I rolled up my window and remained silent, heart pounding in anticipation of what would come. The security guard shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. A few residents exchanged wary glances, some with sympathy for me, others intrigued by the brewing drama. Minutes stretched on. The intercom's faint crackle revealed Mrs. Davenport's side of the call, but the dispatcher's replies were muffled. Then, in the distance, the unmistakable wail of sirens cut through the morning air, growing steadily louder as they approached the gate. A patrol car rolled to a stop beyond the gate, its engine idling in the hush. The officer stepped out, polished badge glinting in the sunlight. He approached with measured strides, hands casually resting near his utility belt. Mrs. Davenport stepped forward, her posture rigid. "Officer, thank you for coming," she began, voice tight. "This man has been trespassing and refusing to comply with HOA and security directives." She gestured toward me, eyes narrowed in indignation. The officer gave her a polite nod, then turned to me. "Sir, can you step out of the vehicle so we can discuss this?" His tone was professional, devoid of judgment. I complied, unbuckling my seatbelt and opening the door. He regarded me with a calm, appraising look. "I understand you're a resident here," he asked. I offered my homeowner ID without hesitation. "Yes, been here for 5 years," I replied. The officer examined the ID, then glanced back at Mrs. Davenport for confirmation. The officer tapped at a handheld terminal, fingers moving swiftly across the screen as he accessed Crestwood Estates' resident database. He scrolled through my profile, name, address, ownership status, all matched perfectly. His brow furrowed for a moment as he confirmed the details. He looked up at Mrs. Davenport, tilting his head politely. "Nothing here indicates a flag or infraction," he reported, voice even. He handed the device to her, allowing her to see the clear record. The tablet displayed my name in bold, marked active resident. Silence settled over the entrance as Mrs. Davenport stared at the screen. The crowd leaned forward, sensing the tension break. Then, almost imperceptibly, the officer's lips curved into a smile, just the corner of his mouth at first. Without warning, he let out a soft chuckle that grew louder by the second. His shoulders shook with mirth as he glanced between us, unable to contain the humor of the situation, the HOA president undone by a routine database check. Neighbors exchanged embarrassed grins as his laughter echoed off the gate. The officer cleared his throat and turned back to Mrs. Davenport. "Ma'am, the system is functioning correctly. Please stand down and allow the gate to reopen." His tone was firm but respectful, reinforcing that his role was to uphold the rules, not to side with personality-driven disputes. With a stiff nod, Mrs. Davenport tapped her tablet one last time. The logs showed no further issues, and she reluctantly initiated the gate's open command. The mechanical whir of the barrier echoed through the entrance, its arms lifting to reveal the road ahead. A ripple of applause and relieved laughter swept through the small crowd. Neighbors patted each other on the back, exchanged triumphant smiles, and muttered congratulations under their breath. Even the guard, who had stood frozen throughout the ordeal, allowed himself a grin. I eased forward, rolling down my window to wave. "Thank you, officer," I called out, voice warm with gratitude. The officer tipped his hat and, with a final nod to Mrs. Davenport, stepped back to let peace return to Crestwood Estates. As I drove through the now open gate, headlights flashed in encouragement from other residents queued behind me. Horns honked softly in a celebratory rhythm, and windows rolled down to offer thumbs up and words of solidarity. The tension that had gripped the entrance minutes before dissolved into a chorus of support for the everyday homeowner who stood his ground. Once inside, I received text messages and calls asking if I was okay. Neighbors shared their own experiences of petty treatment by the HOA, thanking me for standing up publicly. Even those who usually kept to themselves stepped forward with congratulations, relieved that someone had challenged the rigid enforcement they had all quietly endured. Later that morning, the neighborhood's private social media group exploded with posts about the incident. Screenshots of the officer's laughter and memes mocking the president's temper flew through the feed. Many praised the officer for his level-headedness and joked that he should become the new HOA liaison. By midday, the property manager had sent an email reminding everyone of proper gate protocol and apologizing for the confusion. The message closed with thanks to the officer and encouragement for residents to report any future access issues directly to management rather than the president's personal station. Inside the HOA office, Mrs. Davenport paced the carpeted hallway, replaying the morning's humiliation with each step. Her aides exchanged uneasy glances, uncertain whether to offer comfort or distance themselves from the fiasco. The property manager led her to a private conference room, gently closing the door behind them. Sunlight filtered through Venetian blinds, casting striped shadows on the polished oak table. Maps of the community and gate schematics lay spread out, but no one touched them. Instead, the manager cleared his throat and spoke quietly about maintaining professionalism and avoiding personal interventions in gate operations. Mrs. Davenport pressed her palms to her temples, nodding slowly. The weight of her position felt heavier now. Every action would be scrutinized, and her authority, once unquestioned, was suddenly fragile. Word of the confrontation spread beyond our enclave, reaching nearby communities through social media whispers. On local forums, residents debated the HOA president's behavior, praising the officer's impartiality and my decision to stand firm. Some longtime homeowners speculated whether this incident would prompt policy changes or even a leadership challenge. Others shared similar tales of overzealous enforcement, fueling calls for clearer guidelines and checks on the president's authority. Amid the chatter, I received private messages from neighbors offering assistance if I ever needed support against future HOA overreach. The solidarity warmed me. We were no longer isolated individuals but members of a collective voice. By evening, the community group had organized an informal gathering at the clubhouse to discuss improvements to our governance. The tone was hopeful, focused on collaboration rather than conflict, and underscored the belief that even small actions can spark meaningful change. 2 days later, an official HOA newsletter landed in every mailbox. Its header bore an apology from Mrs. Davenport for the gate malfunction, coupled with assurances that no resident would be falsely barred again. The statement credited the security team for resolving the issue swiftly and thanked the responding officer for his professionalism. There was no direct mention of my role, but the implied tribute to resident rights was unmistakable. Some residents noted the careful wording. The president took responsibility for the confusion without naming names or admitting fault. It was a strategic move to repair trust while preserving her stature. Despite the diplomatic language, many applauded the gesture. It marked a tentative step toward rebuilding relationships and acknowledging that even leadership can falter and learn from mistakes. At the next HOA meeting, the property manager unveiled an updated gate access protocol. It included automated alerts for flagged cards, a direct hotline to the management office, and a stipulation against personal intervention by board members. Residents listened attentively as the manager explained how these measures would prevent undue gatekeeping. Mrs. Davenport sat quietly in the back row, her expression composed but thoughtful. During the Q&A, a neighbor raised the issue of transparency. "How will we know when a card is flagged and why?" she asked. The manager nodded, promising that residents would receive immediate notifications and detailed explanations for any access changes. The room buzzed with approval. This level of openness was a welcome divergence from past practices, signaling a shift toward accountability and mutual respect between the HOA and homeowners. Later that week, I took my morning walk past the entrance once more. The gate lifted smoothly, its sensors humming softly, the intercom silent and unobtrusive. The sunrise painted the security booth in gentle light, devoid of tension. I paused at the threshold, recalling the confrontation's chaos. The memory of the president's fury and the officer's laughter made me smile, proof that reason and fairness can prevail even in rigid systems. In that moment, I appreciated the subtle transformation of our community. Small policy tweaks and a shift in leadership attitude had rippled through daily routines, making everyday interactions kinder and more respectful. With a renewed sense of belonging, I stepped onto the path, ready to embrace the day's walk and whatever new chapters lay ahead for Crestwood Estates. Conversations in the coffee shop and at the dog park now carried a different tone. Homeowners spoke openly about gate issues, knowing management would listen rather than fearing arbitrary denials. A recent coffee meetup saw residents sharing tips on using the new hotline and discussing how to hold board members accountable through the community portal. Even Mrs. Davenport attended, quietly observing the energized atmosphere. Her presence was met with nods rather than apprehension, a subtle but meaningful indicator of shifting power dynamics. The community felt safer speaking up, confident that fairness, not favoritism, would guide decisions. I joined the group, nodding in agreement, and added my own experience as a reminder that standing up respectfully can drive positive change. It felt good to be part of a more open, supportive neighborhood. Behind closed doors, Mrs. Davenport reviewed meeting minutes and feedback forms. The outpouring of resident input, previously minimal, now filled pages of suggestions and concerns. Her advisors encouraged her to respond with humility, framing the episode as a learning opportunity. She drafted a message thanking residents for their patience and pledging to attend community events to rebuild personal connections. Late that evening, she stepped out onto her balcony overlooking Crestwood Estates. The manicured lawns glowed under streetlights, a reminder of her responsibility to this place she led. She resolved to balance enforcement with empathy, acknowledging the human element behind each card swipe. The next morning, she greeted the guard with a genuine smile, an unspoken testament to her commitment to change. The breeze carried the promise of a more considerate, collaborative tenure. Following the success of the clubhouse gathering, residents organized smaller focus groups in each cul-de-sac to brainstorm solutions for common issues. These informal meetings took place over weekend brunches, where neighbors exchanged stories about everything from landscaping beautification to speeding concerns. The collaborative spirit was palpable as suggestions flew freely: a community garden, traffic calming measures, and shared tool libraries. Each idea was logged and assigned to volunteers willing to lead its implementation. Observers noted a notable shift in attitudes. Longtime skeptics of HOA involvement now contributed enthusiastically, fueled by the belief that their voices truly mattered. The property manager attended a few sessions, offering guidance on feasibility and budget considerations. Mrs. Davenport, too, quietly circulated among the groups, accepting feedback without interruption, a far cry from her previous gateside edicts. This newfound openness paved the way for tangible progress on projects that had stalled for years. Residents compiled their proposals into a structured agenda for the next HOA meeting, complete with timelines and responsible parties. The meeting agenda arrived in mailboxes days in advance, giving everyone time to review and prepare questions. On the scheduled night, nearly 80% of homeowners attended, a record turnout that underscored the community's investment in positive change. The energy in the room was electric, hopeful, determined, and united. By the meeting's end, the board had approved funding for the pilot community garden and green wave traffic signals, along with the establishment of a rotating committee to oversee future projects. Applause filled the room as volunteers stepped forward to lead subcommittees. What once began as a divided neighborhood had transformed into a collective force ready to shape Crestwood Estates' future together. In an unprecedented move, Mrs. Davenport scheduled a town hall-style forum at the community center, inviting residents to voice their concerns directly to the HOA board. Chairs filled rapidly as homeowners settled in, some clutching notepads, others leaning forward expectantly. The room buzzed with anticipation, no longer a space of tension but one of shared purpose. Opening the session, Mrs. Davenport acknowledged her earlier mistakes, offering a sincere apology for the gate incident. She spoke at length about her commitment to listening and learning, emphasizing that authority meant little without trust and cooperation. Her measured tone and candid admissions marked a stark departure from her prior inflexibility. Homeowners lined up at microphones, raising issues ranging from landscape maintenance to community event planning. Each concern was met with attentive nods and follow-up commitments from the board. When a young family suggested a weekly playgroup for children, the president delegated 2 board members to coordinate dates and resources. By the forum's close, the once tense atmosphere had shifted to one of camaraderie and optimism. Mrs. Davenport stood beside the property manager as residents filed out, many expressing gratitude for the chance to be heard. The forum's success reinforced the idea that governance thrives on dialogue rather than decree. Recognizing the power of digital engagement, a group of tech-savvy residents launched a private forum on the community platform called Crestwood Connect. The page featured real-time updates on HOA decisions, project progress, and financial summaries. Color-coded posts and infographics made complex details accessible to everyone. The campaign's tagline, "See it, believe it, participate," underscored its mission to demystify board actions and encourage resident involvement. Weekly live streams from board meetings allowed distant homeowners to watch discussions and provide input via chat. The property manager moderated questions, ensuring respectful discourse and timely responses. Mrs. Davenport embraced the initiative, occasionally posting behind-the-scenes photos of site inspections and maintenance crews at work. Her transparent updates humanized the presidency, showcasing dedication rather than diktat. Engagement metrics soared, with hundreds of comments, likes, and shares signaling an engaged, empowered community. The social media campaign not only strengthened trust but also produced tangible results: faster response times to maintenance requests, higher volunteer turnout for events, and a noticeable reduction in anonymous complaints. When governance is visible, accountability follows, and Crestwood Estate's digital transformation became a model for neighboring subdivisions. Amid the whirlwind of change, an unlikely hero stepped forward, Mr. Alvarez, the longtime maintenance crew foreman. Having worked behind the scenes for over a decade, he possessed deep institutional knowledge and strong relationships with residents. Recognizing the power of mediation, he offered to serve as an informal liaison between homeowners and the board. His first act was to host quarterly walk and talk sessions, inviting neighbors to stroll through the property alongside board members and staff. These guided tours revealed maintenance challenges and allowed participants to suggest improvements on the spot. Mrs. Davenport joined these walks, taking notes diligently and engaging in candid conversation. Residents appreciated Mr. Alvarez's down-to-earth style. He translated technical jargon into plain language and relayed community feedback without bias. His involvement diffused lingering resentment as both sides came to see him as a trusted messenger. The board formalized his role as community relations advisor, giving him an official seat at monthly meetings. Under his guidance, Crestwood Estates developed a culture of collaborative problem-solving. Projects that once battled bureaucratic inertia now moved forward swiftly, guided by clear communication channels and mutual respect. The alliance between maintenance staff, the board, and homeowners became the backbone of the community's renaissance. Inspired by the successful garden pilot and digital transparency, residents formed Neighbors for Crestwood, a volunteer organization dedicated to community welfare projects. The group roster swelled quickly, encompassing gardeners, event planners, safety advocates, and youth mentors. Their diverse skills complemented official HOA efforts. Neighbors for Crestwood hosted monthly cleanup drives, painting murals on utility boxes and planting native flora along walking paths. Their signature event, a fall harvest festival, featured local crafts, potluck dishes, and live music, drawing families together in celebration. Attendance far exceeded expectations, demonstrating the community's hunger for inclusive gatherings. The volunteer group also set up a Helping Hands program, matching seniors and busy professionals with neighbors willing to assist with errands, light home repairs, and tech tutorials. This peer-to-peer network fostered deeper personal connections and strengthened the social fabric of the estate. HOA leadership supported these initiatives by providing modest funding and logistical assistance. Mrs. Davenport regularly attended events, further cementing her transformed leadership style. The synergy between formal governance and grassroots action cultivated a sense of belonging that no bylaw could achieve on its own. As the annual election approached, campaign posters appeared on bulletin boards and digital forums buzzed with candidate debates. For the first time in years, multiple homeowners stepped forward to run for board positions, eager to contribute to the community's progress. Platforms ranged from infrastructure enhancement to social programming. On election day, polling stations set up at the clubhouse saw lines of residents eager to cast their ballots. Neighbors chatted amicably as they waited, exchanging last-minute endorsements and ideas for future initiatives. Poll workers noted the festive atmosphere, a marked contrast to the apathy of previous years. When the results were tallied, voter turnout had climbed to an unprecedented 85% of eligible households. Incumbents who had championed transparency retained their seats, while two new board members, one a landscape designer and the other a retired teacher, joined to bring fresh perspectives. In her victory speech, Mrs. Davenport congratulated the winners and pledged to work collaboratively with the expanded board. The election results affirmed that true leadership arises from the will of the community, and Crestwood Estates celebrated a mandate for continued partnership between residents and the HOA. To maintain momentum, the board inaugurated Coffee with the President, a casual monthly gathering held at the Clubhouse Cafe. Homeowners arrived with mugs in hand, ready for candid conversation with Mrs. Davenport and board members. No agendas, no formalities, just coffee and community. Discussions ranged from upcoming landscaping plans to budget allocations for holiday decorations. Attendees appreciated the relaxed setting. Ideas flowed naturally, and the power differential felt minimal. Mrs. Davenport listened attentively, jotting down feedback on a communal whiteboard. These meetups also provided a platform for showcasing prototypes and mock-ups for new projects, inviting resident input before final decisions were made. The iterative process reduced surprises later and ensured that projects reflected the community's preferences. As word spread, attendance grew and residents from all backgrounds felt empowered to share their thoughts. The initiative reinforced the notion that effective governance requires regular, informal touchpoints between leaders and constituents. To cap off a year of transformation, Neighbors for Crestwood and the HOA co-hosted a summer festival in the Central Park. Colorful banners proclaimed unity in action as food trucks, game booths, and live performers lined the pathways. Families picnicked under trees, children chased bubbles, and neighbors reconnected in a joyous atmosphere. A central stage featured speeches from residents and board members alike. Mrs. Davenport took the microphone first, recounting the journey from gatehouse tension to community harmony. Her speech was heartfelt, acknowledging the collective effort that made the festival possible. The officer who had unwittingly become a local hero attended as an honored guest, receiving cheers when introduced. He shared a humorous anecdote about the morning gate incident, reminding everyone that laughter can diffuse even the most awkward moments. As the sun set, lanterns illuminated the park and neighbors joined in a group sing-along of an uplifting song chosen by the volunteer choir. The festival symbolized not only a celebration of achievements but also a promise that Crestwood Estates would continue growing together. Months later, newcomers remarked at the open-door policy and collaborative spirit they found in Crestwood Estates. The gatehouse still functioned seamlessly but now greeted residents with friendly smiles rather than rigid scrutiny. The intercom, once a symbol of exclusion, had become an occasional tool for community announcements. The phrase "community first" no longer felt like a tagline but resonated in daily interactions. Board meetings remained well-attended and respectful, with agendas published in advance and follow-up reports shared publicly. Residents continued to hold each other and their leaders to high standards of transparency and fairness. Even the HOA president's official portrait in the clubhouse foyer captured her transformed leadership style. A warm, approachable smile replaced the stern expression of her initial tenure. Visitors often paused to comment on the welcoming vibe that now permeated the estate. What had started as a contentious stand at the gate became the catalyst for a deeper cultural evolution, proof that accountability, open dialogue, and shared responsibility can turn conflict into community greatness. With new protocols firmly in place, Crestwood Estates set its sights on ambitious goals, expanding green spaces, enhancing sustainable practices, and fostering intergenerational mentorship programs. Each project began with community input sessions, ensuring broad representation of ideas. Mrs. Davenport and the board drafted a 5-year strategic plan outlining milestones and metrics for accountability. Quarterly reviews kept residents informed of progress, and adjustments were made transparently when challenges arose. The plan emphasized both physical improvements and the intangible bonds that made the neighborhood thrive. As I strolled past the entrance one morning, the gate lifted at my approach as smoothly as ever. I smiled at the intercom speaker, now a silent partner in our story rather than an adversary. The path ahead looked brighter than any sunrise. In Crestwood Estates, governance had become a shared journey guided by the lessons of that unforgettable morning. And as long as residents and leaders walked that path together, the community's future was destined for remarkable heights.